You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright Review.
What's up, creeps? Welcome to another Epic Film Guys Fresh Fright Review. I'm Justin, and this week on the podcast, I'm joined by our good friend Phil from the Spookhouse podcast. What's
Hello.
up, Phil? How you doing, man?
Back yet again. I gotta say, it feels a little weird to not have BluBrry and or Jeremy on the podcast, but hey, you hit me up today, asked me if I wanted to talk about it, and here I am.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you taking the time and us doing another collab. It seems like lately we've been doing a lot of these, but hey, man, I'm not complaining. I'm all the fuck about it. We're going to be talking about Heretic, which is the brand new religious horror movie by Scott Beck and Brian Woods that released in theaters last week. As of right now, $10 million budget. It's made about $13.6 million. Unfortunately, my friend, not as big of a box office draw as I was hoping, but to be fair, horror has absolutely crushed it this year, so there's always going to be those outliers that aren't going to perform as well, you know. So, but it's still, as of right now, still chugging along. I hope more people get a chance to check it out. It released the week after Halloween, which is never the best timing, but October was already chock full of horror movies. So, prior to the lead up to this movie, were you excited about Heretic?
Yeah, I was. Well, you know what? I gotta say, the trailer, the trailer, I was like, all right. It looks a tad generic, but I did catch an early screening of this at the Alamo.
Yeah, man.
Complete with smell-o-vision. And I did a non-spoiler review in case you haven't seen the movie. Why would you listen if you hadn't? But that's over on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out.
Yeah, because thanks for the warning. We are going to go full spoiler on this one. I am actually super jealous of you. Our Alamo that I work for also did an early advance screening, and they also did the BluBrry candle smell. I think it's only select Alamos that did that, so you fucking lucked out, you bastard.
Dude, not only that, they passed out blueberry pie.
Okay, so first question, how was the smell in the theater? Second question, how was the pie?
Okay, first of all, the smell-o-vision, it only kicked in when the blueberry candle came out.
Okay.
And it was cool. I mean, it smelled like blueberry pie, but it was only for that scene. And there was no, like, noise or anything, like, oh, here comes the smell. It just sort of
It creeps up.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I felt like they could have utilized that technology a little more, like throughout the rest of the movie, but it was cool. And the pie, gotta be honest, I think it was just like store-bought. It was room temperature, but hey, it was free pie.
Are you a fan of blueberry pie?
I fuck with a blueberry cobbler. I haven't had blueberry pie in a very long time, but yeah, I love blueberries.
Well, that's amazing. I'm glad that you got to experience that. And it's always interesting because all the A24 movies, all of the advanced screenings that we go to as press are always at my work, like the location that I book for in DC at Bryant Street. And apparently A24 just really likes Alamo, which is pretty awesome. So
yeah, no complaints. Bring them on.
So to those uninitiated, like I already said, this is going to be full spoiler, but if you are unaware of what Heretic is all about, it's about two young missionaries who become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant. Trapped within his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. That is the official synopsis of Heretic. On my end, I felt pretty pumped to watch this, but to your point, the trailer didn't like knock my socks off or anything, but the idea of having Hugh Grant
Yeah.
in a horror movie just captured my attention.
Not since Lair of the White Worm in 87.
Wow. Deep cut right there. I was wondering if, because a lot of people are talking about this movie as if he's never dipped his toe in the genre. And I was like, hold on a minute now. Look through his filmography a little bit,
Yeah.
But right from the get-go here, I have to say that, he's absolutely infectious in this movie. If there is a reason to go see it above all, I don't know if you agree or not, but this is, I would say, an Oscar caliber performance, which this year for horror, there have been many Oscar caliber performances, and this is just another one. I would actually probably bet money that next month that Robert Eggers' Nosferatu will probably also feature an Oscar caliber performance or performances. We'll see, but this movie, it's the, I think, the third or fourth religious horror movie we've gotten this year. We had Immaculate, The First Omen, and now Heretic. So we're stepping away from just flat trauma being the source of horror, and we're getting back to religion, which I for one, hey, fucking bring it on, man. I'm all about religious horror.
Yeah, it's usually not my favorite sect of horror, but if done right, yeah. It's and I think this one brings some new ideas to the table. I'm kind of over girl possessed by a thing calling the priest, and yeah.
I mean, we've had how many movies with the term exorcism or exorcist in the title in the past couple of years? I think Russell Crowe has done 2 of them.
Dude,
he did
what
2
about
that weren't even connected? I think the first one he did, The Exorcism, was that the one? Pretty sure that's the one that he did.
Yeah. And there's also the Dan Stevens, Al Pacino Exorcist movie coming out.
No, the one that I actually liked with Russell Crowe, though, I'm going to correct myself. It was The Pope's Exorcist, which I'm not sure if you saw that one, but it was a fucking blast, man. I didn't go to the theater to see it. We didn't review it on the show or anything, but it was on Netflix, and my wife's like, do you want to watch this? I was like, it looks really stupid. Sure. Let's fucking watch it.
I didn't watch it, but I like Russell Crowe. Yeah.
I mean, it looked like a paycheck role for him, but he was actually good in it. It was a lot of fun. He rode around a fucking Vespa the whole movie. It was pretty hilarious. But to your point, yes, I get what you're saying about religious horror, but I'm open for a shift from the trauma, or the, as Jamie Lee Curtis calls it, the trauma. I'm like, I wonder if she has ever watched a trauma movie before. Probably not, but psychological horror and Hugh Grant. That just seems like a match made in heaven in terms of movie fans' perspective. And I think it also happens to be the recipe for one of the most interesting and diverse horror movies this year. Heretic just kind of sets itself apart in the sense that, yes, it has some violence, but it's also another, you're trapped in a house and you have to figure things out in order to get out of the house. And in this case, he uses religion and the faith of these 2 characters, our 2 leads, to test them and their faith and see if they're able to handle it. And I think it was almost like Saw, but from a fucking biblical standpoint, you know what I mean? Without the traps and without the torture porn.
Yeah, and I gotta say, right off the top, the performances all around are spot on, perfect. No complaints with the acting. The dialogue is razor sharp. The script is probably bigger than the Bible itself. It's a very talky movie, and that's not a bad thing.
It is heavily a talky movie, and I find this interesting. I watched a couple interviews with Hugh Grant leading up to the release, and he mentioned how his whole career he's been really good at talking. That's something he's always been confident about. Whereas in this movie, he had to use his eyes, his mannerisms. There were a lot of close-ups in order to project what his character was trying to be and who he was. And I was like, motherfucker, you talked more in this movie than I swear in any other movie I've ever seen you in. I was like,
yeah,
you don't stop talking from the start to the fucking end. And I was starting to wonder, thinking about dialogue, how difficult it must have been to actually remember all of the shit, especially all the religious stuff. I'm like, man, he is super talented. Like the scene where he brings them into his church that he built inside of his house, when he was just spouting off at the mouth on all the different versions of religion, Judaism,
Monopoly.
Christianity, Catholicism. Yeah, he's likening the the different versions of religion to board games, interpretations, iterations. I was like, man, he's just on fire. He just kept going. And I'm pretty sure when I was paying attention to it, there weren't many cuts in that scene. So it was just like endless dialogue.
Yeah. And Hugh Grant said in the after the movie was over, they did a live stream Q&A with Hugh Grant, and he was just commending Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East for, I mean, he said that some of these takes were like 10 minutes long, just watching him read all this dialogue, and they have to be like locked in, have the right expression on their face, don't look away, don't be aware that you're clenching your jaw or something like that. And I just gotta commend them for just the performances that they gave, including Hugh Grant. I mean, he was phenomenal. So fun to watch. Loved it.
Absolutely. Bringing up Sophie Thatcher, I think last time we talked, I'm not sure if we did it on the air or not, but I'm pretty sure I brought her up to you and you were unaware. Was it you who was unaware of who Sophie Thatcher was? It may not have been. But
I don't think it was.
Okay.
I'm aware now.
Well, if you weren't, you are. And ladies and gentlemen, if you weren't, you will be now. I fell in love with her as an actress in Yellow Jackets, which is one of my favorite shows of the last 5 years. She's brilliant in that. And then she was in that really fucking terrible, shitty, awful, I wanted to puke all over it horror movie, The Boogeyman, that came out last year.
Oh, yeah. She was good in that.
She was serviceable in a really badly made movie that
you know what?
Made me mad.
I've only seen it once, but I remember at the time, maybe I was just in a good mood that day, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this movie. But I walked away from it like, hey, that wasn't that bad, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I was angry for a week over the Boogeyman.
I've only seen it once, though, so I don't know.
No, it's all right. But she is fantastic in the film as Sister Barnes. She gives the exact type of performance and presence that I would expect from her. Also, she's a singer, which I didn't realize. And at the end of the movie, they played a song that she sings, and she's an amazing voice. Absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
But Chloe East, who plays her partner in terms of, them being from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, Sister Paxton, Chloe East, she was in a whole bunch of movies recently. She was in The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's movie about his childhood, but also a little-known horror movie from 2020, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is a fantastic little werewolf movie. Have you seen that one, Phil?
Yes, I have, and I am dying to rewatch it because that movie is fucking great. I didn't know she was in that. Yeah,
so she's been getting some good roles here, and she's actually fantastic in this film as well. So a great casting choice, a great team here. So the movie opens and basically these girls are just making their rounds. Just, everyone that has lived in a suburban neighborhood knows when Jehovah's Witnesses come knock on your door, or a local church will come knock on your door and ask you if you've been saved or hand you religious literature. These are those girls. That's what they're doing here. And they have a list of people that said they would be interested in possibly learning more about the church. And that's when they come to the home of a reclusive Englishman, Mr. Reed. They lock their bikes up at the fence, and then they go into the home, even though it's against their best, in their mind, they're knowing that I don't see a woman here. It's our law, our rules, that we cannot walk into a home of a man without a woman in the room as well. But he just says, hey, my wife's in there making a pie. So come on in. We'll get a slice of pie. You'll be all good. And this proceeds into a scene which I think is brilliant. I think the first act of the movie is maybe even its strongest, because we're introduced to this character of Mr. Reed, and it builds suspense right from the start. You can feel this tension just slowly permeating and building throughout. It's almost like starting up at the bottom of the floor and rises up to the ceiling to a point where you know shit's going to go wrong. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you already know shit's going to go wrong, but watching it from that perspective, it's fun to just see. It's almost the Alfred Hitchcock rule of thumb. You see there's a bomb under the table, you're just waiting for it to go off kind of thing, you know, and that's like the key rule to having suspense in your movie. And it is interesting that this movie held me for as long as it did, just solely talking about religion.
Yeah, and just before we even get to that scene, I love the way these characters are introduced. They're just sitting on a park bench talking about Magnum condoms. It's such a like naive and innocent conversation, but you immediately understand who these characters are. You're like, okay, I want nothing but good things to happen to these two. They're just innocent, naive girls. Like, so right away, I love the introduction of these characters,
especially when you can see how naive they are when they're walking across the street. And a handful of teenagers walks up and Sister Paxton's like, I think I love those girls already. They walk up and ask if they can take a selfie with her, and they end up pulling her like pants down or her like skirt down or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it just shows like, and if you watch any documentary about Mormonism or these very cult-like churches, I'll dare say, yeah, if you're in that church and you're listening, this is, you know, no offense to you and your religion. But it is very cult-like if you look at it from an outsider's perspective.
Sure.
You know, you're kind of in your own world when you're there, you know, especially in the case of these individuals. They live at the church like this is their life. Their faith is their life.
Yeah, and to add to that, Justin, if these people knock on your door or someone similar, don't be a dick to them. I know some people like to give them shit. They're just, you know, they're just trying to do what they think is right. I always just politely decline, but...
Sure.
Yeah.
If it's in public and they're handing out a brochure, I always take it. Just out of...
Yeah, sure.
I've always just been taught to respect people.
Sure.
Not to be rude. I'm not saying that I read it, but I'll always take it, say thank you, because they're being polite to me, so I'll be polite back to them. It doesn't even matter what religion it is.
Yeah.
I respect them for what they're trying to do. Now, if they're trying to get money from me, they can go fuck themselves right off the fucking bat.
Yeah.
Don't ask me for money in public, but I totally agree with what you're saying. They're just trying to do what they think is the right thing. And they end up here at his house, and you just know that shit's going to start hitting the fan. They build up the suspense. He takes their coats, and I knew from the get-go that Sister Barnes had the key to her bike, the bike lock, in her jacket when he takes the jackets. So I immediately knew, oh shit, he's got the key. And when they walk in the door, it's almost like you'd think it'd be a throwaway line, but he asks them if they're okay that the house is lined with metal, or is it...
Right, yeah. He's like, there's metal in the walls.
And then, so my wife immediately turns to me and she was like, why would he ask that? And then I was thinking like, oh, okay, people aren't going to notice that line.
Yeah,
he does it so casually.
Yeah, so Hugh Grant did say on the Q&A that, or maybe it was whoever was hosting the panel, that this movie holds up on rewatch because when you watch it for a second time, you pick up on little hints and clues as to what's happening. Like, for example, he opens the door and greets them while he's holding his little watering container that he uses in the basement. So just I do want to rewatch this. I would say,
oh, for sure, man.
Once it hits streaming, I'll throw it on.
Yeah, this is one that I might even pick up just to support it, because I really liked the originality of it. I mean, we've seen movies with similar concepts before. We've seen plenty of horror movies about religion, but this movie, you know, when you look at it next to the other movies we've received this year in terms of the horror genre, it just stands out as something more unique, a little bit different. So as we were saying, they're in this room. He starts challenging their knowledge of their own religion And it's very apparent that this guy has been a deep diver into every religion. He brings up some good points, but the questions that he starts asking the two sisters become even more and more uncomfortable as time goes on. And they keep asking if his wife can come in the room. He leaves a few times, comes back, and I think that's when Sister Barnes notices that the blueberry smell is just a blueberry pie candle.
Right. Yeah, you
And the
can.
pair-
Oh, sorry. You can
No, I was
pick
gonna say-
up on that. Sophie Thatcher is a little more street smarts. than
Absolutely.
Sister Paxton. She's a little oblivious, like, oh, this is what a nice guy. Sophie Thatcher's like, nah, this isn't right.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's brilliant about that is Sophie Thatcher does most of that in her performance with her eyes and her mannerisms,
Yeah.
just her facial expressions. So they realize very quickly it's just a candle. They realize the front door is locked and they don't have any phone signal at all whatsoever. So they're kind of fucked. They can't get out the front door. There's a window that there's no way they're fitting through. They end up just going into this lecture hall. And leading up to this, Phil, I thought it was fucking brilliant that they're going in the darkness of the hallway and you see a silhouette. And that shit was terrifying. That image was so fucking scary, dude.
Yeah, that was a good moment. Just a subtle, creepy. Yeah.
What in the hell?
I like that.
Was that just a statue?
Yeah,
like,
statue, I believe.
Whatever the fuck it was, that's one of the scariest images I've seen in a movie all year. I was like,
Yeah.
starting to feel a little bit of goosebumps in my back. Like, whoa. Like, because, going into this movie, I had no clue what direction it was going to go in. It could have, there could have been a monster in the basement. They could have had a serial killer living upstairs. You didn't know which direction it was going to go. So I liked the mystery of that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But they proceed to go into this lecture hall, which looks like a really creepy old church that's built into his house. And this is where as we already mentioned, he starts to basically school them on every religion and the history of religion and likens them all to just being control.
Yeah, this is the guy at the party. You want to avoid this guy. He's like, hey, man, did you know that everything you believe is a lie? Be like, all right, good to meet you. I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
I don't need to have my mind blown, bro.
There's absolutely those people all over the fucking place. They have no better thing to do in their life than to, again, I have no issue or I don't hate on people reading, especially literature in terms of like learning about different religions and cultures. That's not frowned upon in my eyes. I think it's a great thing to do.
Sure.
But clearly this guy is a little bit on the edge of being obsessed with the shit.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to break out an acoustic guitar. Here, I wrote this song.
Yeah.
Let me force you to listen to it.
This is where Sister Barnes realizes that she checks her pocket. The key is gone, but it ended up in Sister Paxton's coat instead. Mr. Reed is distracted, and Barnes slips Paxton a letter opener and tells her to attack the code word magic underwear, which I thought was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
But then Reed, after he does his whole spiel, he gives the girls a choice to go through two doors to exit the house.
Oh,
One if
real,
they still
real
believe
quick,
God.
Justin?
Go ahead.
I love that, that little, there was like a drip in the ceiling and this little thing was catching the water. I love
the
that.
sound there? Oh,
yeah,
man.
I love that as a device to build tension. It would just go off every now and again. It would just ratchet up the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like that.
That's the thing about the movie is once they start the conversation in the living room, it builds immensely. I think until the point where I was getting to where they have to go through these two doors. And from there on, the movie kind of goes into known territory. Or
I was literally about to say, been there, done that.
a little bit, yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah, I would say that it does. Before they go or make their decision, I loved how Sister Barnes challenges him and kind of flips out on him and shows that she's not intimidated by his intellect in any way, that she can stand on her own 2 feet right in his face and throw back on him. So, but she decides, no, we're going to go in the door. that shows we still have faith. That's why we're here. We're not going to say that we don't have faith just because this guy, preached to us his beliefs. They go down in a basement dungeon, which cool. It's awesome atmosphere. I thought it was a great set. I thought it was very well designed in terms of production design. Then they're there. I mean, like I feel like at this point there's no way out, and the rest of the movie from an audience perspective is, well, how are they going to get out?
Right. Like you said, the first act of this masterclass of tension and dialogue. For me, once they enter the basement and the lady from Sleepy Hollow comes out.
Oh, yeah. Looked a lot like her, didn't it?
It did. I was waiting for her head to fly back and her eyes
to come out of her eye. Yeah,
yeah. Once that happens, I wouldn't say the movie didn't lose me at any point, but it was just a little, I don't know. Like you said, we've kind of seen this before.
Yeah, he does this thing where he's trying to show them that they're going to see someone be reborn, which
Yeah.
I didn't buy from the start. Someone eats the lady from Sleepy Hollow eats the poison pie and dies, and Reed's claiming that the pair will witness her to be resurrected. And, that stuff didn't really hit me that hard or anything like that. But side note here, which I thought was hilarious, is that a Mormon elder arrives looking for the girls.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
Eric
Topher fucking
Foreman.
Grace.
Eric Foreman to the rescue. Dude, I didn't know that was him until credits rolled.
That's so hilarious you said that, because I saw the movie with Loy Sauce, and he turns to me and he's like, I know him. I go, of course you fucking know him. It's fucking Venom from Spider-Man 3. It's Topher Grace. He's like, no way. I'm like, yeah, he just looks different because he's old now. You're chuckling because we saw it at a local AMC here, but it's really nice. It's got like a huge screen, laser projection, 4K, large format, and they showed this in it and no one came. So we had the theater all to ourselves, which I'm all about. But we were like laughing out loud once we realized, oh my God, it's Topher Grace. I'm like, he's just taking whatever he can get at this point. He's in the movie all of 5 fucking minutes.
Yeah, and he knows all about the dangers of organized religion, am I right?
Absolutely. He sure does. But so he shows up looking for the girls, and the bikes are missing. And I was hoping, oh man, he's going to see the bikes and then he's going to get involved. Nope, because Mr. Reed already took the bikes and hid them. So they're left on their own. They have no one that can help them. No one knows they're in there. It's just basically they're going to have to figure a way out.
Let me ask you this, Justin. We don't see anybody die in the movie, right? There's no deaths.
Technically, well, we do, because the lady that eats the poison pie does die.
Well, yeah.
Because
wait, no, well, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed does die.
Okay, but
you brought that on a little early, but yeah.
Oh, sorry about that, everybody.
It's all right. I mean, I wouldn't think while watching the movie that he would make it out alive. I wouldn't think that, but
yeah, but my question is, do you think that he should have invited Eric Foreman inside, and maybe we have a moment where you see that Mr. Reed's not fucking around and he like brutally kills him just to add a little something while we got the basement stuff going on?
That's a fair idea to bring up. I wouldn't necessarily be against that. The movie, I wouldn't say is neutered in terms of violence. It's got some pretty brutal shit. Absolutely. Sure. Some very solid, really visceral violence. But I'm not sure that's where it wanted to go.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think his inclusion was there to build suspense. It's always like we're screaming in the other room, or is the guy at the door going to hear? And of course he didn't. And he didn't have anything to do after that. He's just out of the movie.
Yeah, he hands him a pamphlet, which was hilarious, by the way.
I did like that scene where he comes back. I did like where he comes back. Like he's like, "Hey," and you're thinking, "Oh, he's going to notice something." Nope. I'd be remiss if I didn't give this to you. And he just walks away. So that would have been, I think it would have been a great scene, but at the same time, I think this character only preys on those that he knows he has power over. And I'm not saying that Eric Foreman would give him a huge fight. He looked kind of like a meek gentleman. We saw him like mopping the fucking floor, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that he would be a formidable foe in any way. Reed is clearly a force to be reckoned with here in terms of intellect, know-how. He has a plan for everything, it seems. And so, I mean, I'm not sure how he would have fared against him, but I think he obviously at some point in the movie underestimates these girls. He does take them for being out of their element, slightly naive and stupid. And what I loved about the movie is that it takes the characters and kind of switches them in a way where you expect Sophie Thatcher is going to be the hero of the thing because she's more street smart, she's more badass. And Chloe East's character is kind of naive, almost portrayed in the beginning as kind of like an airhead, kind of like a silly Billy. And it turns out that that's not the case, that Sister Paxton turns into a badass. And I think every final girl, every memorable final girl in terms of, you know, the beginnings of what would be considered a final girl were like the Laurie Strodes, where they started out a little bit on the innocent side and had to fight through the movie in order to gain their final girl status. And I think this is one of those cases where it went back to the classic version of that title and had us see a character build themselves up and have to figure out how they can become that. And by the end of the movie, she is a badass. I mean, she fucks him up, but not before we see Sister Barnes get viciously stabbed and get fucked up when we think she's dead.
Yeah. You could say she should have been dead.
She should have been. She does come back. She does end up, in some sense, saving the day in what is probably one of the most memorable scenes in the movie. It was, I likened this to Saw a little bit earlier, but it was another one of those moments, not quite with the impact at the end of the first Saw, but you know what I mean, where you think a character is dead or alive, and then the opposite happens, and there's a very memorable moment, obviously, in this case, involving Mr. Reed. And I really enjoyed that aspect.
I gotta say, that moment, though, it didn't quite feel earned, and it kind of made me roll my eyes just a little bit. I was like, oh, come on.
Really?
Seriously? Kinda. I mean, she just pops up, like, out of nowhere. Here to save the day.
Well, it's classic horror hero shit. I mean, that's just what I likened it to. And of course, in Sophie Thatcher's kind of the it girl right now. She's on that list. So I was happy to see her pop back up, but
stabbed with a piece of wood with 3 nails in it. Symbolic much?
Pretty badass stuff
Perhaps.
there. Yeah, so I'll mention this before we get to the final act, or breakdown rather, and then our final thoughts. I love how the movie presents a lot of ideas, and I saw some people in the critical realm giving the movie shit for presenting a lot of ideas and not giving a definitive answer or viewpoint on them. How did you feel about that? In terms of the religious aspect, where obviously going into the movie, a person of faith could have a different perspective on the ending than someone of having no faith, or depending on what your faith is, if you are Jewish or if you're a Christian or you're Catholic or fill in the blank.
Well, even though the movie presents a lot of big ideas like that, and it attacks religion in a lot of ways, it was done so in a way where it wasn't like, if you believe this, you're an idiot, which I appreciated because, you know, let people can believe whatever the fuck they want. But yeah, I didn't need any definitive answers to these lectures that Mr. Reed was giving because, much like life, we don't have the answers. So what were they going to say? Like, oh, I discovered the meaning of religion and afterlife. It's like, no, there's no satisfying answer to give.
Absolutely. The movie presents religion from a scientific perspective in terms of the facts connected to religion, but it also starts and ends with characters having faith, and that faith getting them through the situation. There's a great line of dialogue where they're talking about praying, and Sister Paxton mentions that she knows that praying doesn't do anything, but it's a comfort for herself and those that she's praying for. And though a lot of people give people they don't know on the internet shit about saying thoughts and prayers, that's like a whole thing now where people say it's lazy, it's a shitty way to show care to people in bad situations. I don't feel that way, because if it's coming from a place of good and a place of comfort from that individual, you don't know that individual. So
sure. Well, if you're a politician saying that, it's like, you got to do more than that.
No.
To make this political.
Well, I'm not talking about politicians, but it's like,
but sure.
So it's, I've known super ultra religious people that are pieces of shit, and I know some that are amazing people, and their religion helps them be an amazing person. I won't mention anything to do with my beliefs on the show because that's not anything I do. The Epic Film Guys, we don't talk about our own beliefs in that sense or politics. That shit can stay elsewhere. We're here to talk about fucking movies. Yeah. But I liked that the movie presents this as a non-judgmental, in a way, viewpoint on religion. So, because obviously there are other movies that tackle this and try to take a side on one way or the other. And I liked that this just was a thriller. You're there to be entertained, and it has a lot of things thrown at you in terms of facts, beliefs, and such. But by the end of the movie, that's not why you're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least from my perspective,
I never go into a movie seeking the answers to the universe, and I didn't expect them here, but I had a fun time with a tense thriller that was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, Hugh Grant channeling his Nicolas Cage, giving it his all, doing a fucking Jar Jar Binks impression.
Oh my God, when he did that was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, so, I mean, he was just so charismatic, and I almost want to see this character live on somehow. But I think that might be the end of Mr. Reed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not sure Heretic lends itself to a sequel. Nah. I know what you're saying. It's such a charismatic character. I would even liken this to being, on the level of horror icon status. I mean, super memorable, amazing performance. There's not much more you need than that. And also very original. Yeah. Because he's fucking likable. Yeah. Even though he is dastardly and he's putting these girls through complete hell, he has literal fucking female slaves that he has in like this fucking ice box, basically, in his basement.
What'd you think of that angle? Like once they got to that room, what'd you think?
Well, what I think is those women that were there were the same as Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton.
Right.
He broke them down. He broke them to the point where now they are under his control. The movie's all about control, and he is using religion the same way that he says that religion has always done so, for control. And in this case, neither Sister Barnes or Sister Paxton fall for his control. At some point, they break free of it, and they find solace in their faith and his power, and they push through it. And leading up to that scene, though, I did love how his house has like random, strange underground tunnels and shit.
Yeah, it was kind of people under the stairs a little bit.
I felt that, and I loved how the juxtaposition of those scenes and then also the model he has of the house and those tunnels, when you would see him like looking at it on his desk. That was pretty cool. But I mean, I thought it was super creepy. I definitely didn't expect him to have like he's holding these women hostage there. Added an additional creep factor for me for sure. And from there we can see that this is the moment, I think, where we see Sister Paxton is not going to give up. She's going to fuck shit up, and right back to where she was with Sister Barnes. Reed's preparing to finish her off, and he gets suddenly killed with that plank of wood with the nails on it, like you said. And
yeah, did maybe I'm just not remembering, but did Sister Barnes, did she survive, or was that just kind of ambiguous?
No, she's dead. Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah.
she.
Yeah, she succumbs to her wounds, and she's a goner. Yeah, she has just enough life left in her,
just enough to
give you that awesome scene, Phil. And then she's like, "Nope, it's classic movie death. I'm gonna die in your arms."
Yeah.
Tonight.
One could say a trope, perhaps, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. It didn't
tropes,
ruin the movie for me or anything, but
yeah, I mean, tropes are there for a reason. As long as they're not overdone, we don't see every single fucking one of them in one movie. It doesn't matter, and as long as the movie does those tropes effectively and it makes sense to what they're trying to do with the story, the characters, fill in the blank, then I'm fine with it. And the ending of the movie, Sister Paxton finds her way outside. She runs to freedom. And she had mentioned earlier in the movie that when she dies, she wants to be a butterfly. And she wants to land on the hand of her loved ones so that they know that it's her. And honestly, when she says that line in the movie, there's people sitting behind us. They laughed. I think it's a line because she sounds so naive and so silly. But it's also a very pure thought. Like,
sure. I think it's a beautiful sentiment.
And so when
those people.
Yeah, no, for sure. Fuck those people. I should have turned around and be like, shut the fuck up.
Dude, side note, I saw Halloween on Halloween in the theater.
I saw that, yeah.
I wanted to lock the doors of that place and set it on fire. The worst fucking audience I've ever
Hold on now. Where did you see it?
Just a AMC.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I hope you didn't go to Alamo, because we usually show Halloween on Halloween, too.
I wish it were Alamo, but no, it was just full of people talking on their phones, just hanging out. It's like, why are you here? I don't get it.
This is becoming an ongoing thing that we talk about on the Epic Film Guys almost every single episode.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's so
really
obvious. Just don't, or just fucking stay home. But I mean, I had seen Halloween a million times, so it wasn't. If these people show up to Nosferatu, I'm throwing hands, broken hand or not.
I think you'll be fine, man. I mean, how far is the Alamo from you?
10 minutes. But
Just go see it there.
I'll be in Florida for Christmas, so
no.
I'm gonna have to venture to because I'm seeing that shit opening day. I'll be like, all right, guys. I don't care that we're opening presents. I got to go.
Listen, I was going to say, you'll be down there in Florida. But if you want to come up here when we see our press screening of it, you're welcome to do that. So you won't have to hear any talking at all.
Dude, so down for that. Yeah. When's
the
press screening? Sorry.
Yes. No, it's okay. Absolutely. No, I'm not even joking either. I'll let you know when I find out when it's going to be. But so at the end of the movie, Sister Paxton, for just a moment, she sees a butterfly land on her hand. And like I said, she had earlier expressed that desire to be reincarnated as a butterfly. And then the butterfly suddenly vanishes, leaving the nature of her reality totally up in the air. And I liked that the movie did that. I liked that it presented one idea and then it took it away and it's a different idea. But that's still her faith. Like, so the movie ends and what her faith was is still fully intact within herself, and she gets out and she's safe. I liked the ending. I thought the symbolism, I thought it was strong. I thought it was pretty powerful stuff, as simple as it was. And there you go.
It left me thinking on the drive home, like, what did that last shot mean? And it got me thinking, like, did she actually die? And she was hallucinating that and escaping and the butterfly landing?
Well, you could think that. In my perspective, I think it was just symbolism.
Yeah.
Or she had been attacked. She had been stabbed. She was injured. So she could be losing fucking blood and yeah, just hallucinating shit and like, oh, look, a butterfly. Then it just goes away because she's, going in and out of hallucinating. That's another perspective.
Sure.
But that's what I was saying earlier about the movie itself. It doesn't take a definitive stance on really much. And I think I totally get people wanting, when there's a movie that begs questions to have answers to them. This movie doesn't really do that. It just presents these ideas as part of the theming of the movie itself, but it still makes you think about it. So it is thinking man's horror in a sense, but it's not pretentious. It's not talking down to you, and it's not talking shit to either side of the spectrum in terms of religion and anti-religion.
Yeah, even though Mr. Reed is those things, the message of the movie is, like you said, not going that route. And I'm fine with that. I'd rather it be kind of open to interpretation. So
absolutely. Those are my favorite kinds of psychological horror movies, or ideas that present bigger, or movies that present bigger ideas rather. Just let them live in their own way, and movies that can allow people from, all walks of life to see them in their own view. And
sure,
I think it's time to do it, man. It's time for Trash It or Treasure It. So, Bill, your final thoughts on Heretic, and is this going to be a Trash It or a Treasure It?
I'm going to go Treasure It. Certainly can't trash this movie. First 2/3 of the movie, loved it. The third act, wouldn't say it loses me, but it's trying. If it wasn't for that, like, razor sharp dialogue, I might have checked out. But yeah, Treasure It.
I'm going to be lock and step with you. It's going to be a Treasure It for me as well. I also agree. I think the first and second act are fantastic. I think everything there works really, really well. There's a great buildup of suspense. It was tense. It was exciting. And I liked the subject matter. I liked the theming. I loved that it used religion in the way that it did. It was also very funny. There were moments, like you said, with Hugh Grant when he does the Jar Jar Binks voice, and he is a likable guy. He has charisma in these really awkward situations while he's also terrifying. I will say he's not nearly as frightening as I expected he was going to be, but I think he doesn't go full force Nicolas Cage. You mentioned Nicolas Cage. He's more like, I would say, like pig Nicolas Cage than long legs Nicolas Cage.
He's like the Great Value Nicolas Cage. Mom, can we have Nicolas Cage at home?
Yeah.
And you get Mr. Reed.
But it was great to see him in a role like this. He's played villains. He's absolutely played villains. He played a fucking villain in Dungeons and Dragons, which I thought he was fucking great in that too. He's just a joy to watch in anything that he's in. Romantic comedies, action movies, you name it. I love it. And you mentioned the dialogue. So Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who directed the movie together, they also wrote the movie. So fantastic work there. I really thought the dialogue was great. And the characters, all well-rounded. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, brilliant. And hey, man, Topher fucking Grace as Elder Kennedy. You can't talk about the movie without him. He's still in there because the movie is one of those very small,
almost like a stage play or something.
There's only a couple characters. It's all one location for the most part, except for the opening. And I did need to bring up, I need to look this up really quickly here. Let me take a moment. Let's see. Cinematography. Yes, that's what I wanted to bring up because Chung Hoon did the cinematography for this, and holy fucking shit. There's a scene in the opening of the movie with the girls, and they're going up this massive hill with like these concrete steps, and you see the mountains in the background, and I just thought it was breathtaking to watch. There's some great stuff once they're in the house too, but the lead up to that is just grandiose. It's huge. There's a shot of them walking into the house, Phil, from the perspective of the fence where they left their bike and it's raining, it's just beautiful. And you would expect that in an A24 movie. I feel like every A24 movie has that sense of artsy to it, but this was, brilliant stuff.
I'm glad you brought that up, particularly the stair scene when they're just. When I saw that, I was like, that's a beautiful shot. All those shots of them just like walking around the town, it was so well shot. I kind of wanted to just like give me 5 more minutes of them maybe knocking on some other houses and just let's stay outside for a little bit before we get to Mr. Reed's. Yeah, I enjoyed all that.
This is the guy that shot the original Old Boy, so it would make sense that he's got his shit, he's got his chops in check. Also, recently he did the new Willy Wonka movie, Uncharted, and he also did Last Night in Soho, which is an Edgar Wright movie that I like, that not many people do, but it still looks gorgeous. So props to the cinematography. Like I said, treasuring this one. Another stand-up for the horror genre. If anyone comes up to me, or I would say when we do our end of the year 2024 horror list, if anyone on the show tells me that horror sucked this year, I swear to God, they're going to hear it from me. It's been a fucking great year for horror. It's been exciting. It's been diverse. I can't complain. 2025 is going to have to do a really good job, especially if Nosferatu is as good as I'm thinking it's going to be.
Yeah, man, I was thinking about that recently, like as far as an end of year, best movies of the year. It's going to be tough. I mean, might have to be The Substance. I don't know what else can beat that. That's just so
Substance
good.
is absolutely in my top 5, but luckily for me, I get to separate them. I do regular, just all movies, and then I do horror, and I usually let horror be its own thing, so that way it's much easier for me to distinguish. Here's my normal movies, like action, science fiction, film, whatever the fuck it is, and then horror. So that way everything gets an opportunity to have a good place on the list. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to this Fresh Fright Epic Film Guys review of Heretic. If you've seen the movie, let us know what you think in the comment section wherever you're seeing this posted on social media. Phil, thanks again for coming on the show and talking about it with me. If our listeners are unaware of what the Spookhouse podcast is, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
It is a horror movie podcast. Simple as that. We talk about movies. I don't claim to break the mold, but I'd like to think that the show has its own unique thing going on. I'm doing more stuff on the YouTube channel. Lots of kind of solo videos, lists, and breakdowns of whatever I feel like recording a video about. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Listen wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, and also you're on Instagram, which is where you do the bulk of your social stuff, correct?
That is the only source of social. Maybe I should be better about that, but I don't want to get on Twitter.
Talking to someone, well, Twitter is about to fucking implode as of right now. Most people are exiting. Not the Epic Film Guys, though, ladies and gentlemen. I don't give a fuck. Politics will not make me, force me to leave all of our followers on there. Fuck that. We're there to talk about movies. So.
What is this blue sky stuff I'm seeing? People are like,
it's basically a new version of Twitter.
Okay.
Kind of like Threads was. Threads is what Threads is. It is what it is. I have an account on there. I haven't done shit with it. What people don't realize, and again, I'm not getting political on the show. It's not my place. But people are leaving Twitter because of Elon Musk and what he's done with Twitter since he bought it. No one calls it X, by the way. It's still Twitter.
Yeah.
And he gives a voice to people like Nazis and racism. He lets people say whatever they want. And, like-minded people like myself that don't want to deal with those assholes are like, no, I'm jumping ship. I don't want to hear their voices. But unfortunately, social media is social media. So wherever you go, they're going to be there. So just hiding from them, it's not going to solve anything in my perspective. Is just stand up for yourself, be who the fuck you are. And there's always going to be assholes out there. There's always going to be people that have different opinions than you and different beliefs. And unfortunately, we have to coexist with those people. I'm not saying you shouldn't punch a Nazi. Fuck yeah, go ahead. Feel free. Absolutely, I agree with that. But I'm just saying from the perspective of a movie podcast, film critic, I'm there to talk about movies. I don't give a shit about your politics, unfortunately. So take that as you will. But Blue Sky is a new place, so we are on there. Maybe I should, like you said, maybe I should put more effort into that one. But motherfucker, I already have to do Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, fucking Threads, TikTok, all the other stuff.
Yeah,
it is
it's a lot.
time consuming, ladies and gentlemen. It is very time consuming.
OnlyFans. I mean,
well, if you want to see a good OnlyFans, check out Tony from Hack the Movies. That's where it's at. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this episode of the Epic Film Guys. You already know where we're at. We just talked about it at Epic Film Guys on every social media platform. And the podcast is available everywhere you listen to your podcast. Thanks again for listening. And as always, we'd like to ask you to keep it creepy.